Hi there! I'm going to visit one of the more vocal globe Earth and space deniers this time. I'm talking about Level Earth Observer, also known as LEO. Now, LEO claims he's not a flat earther, so we can't say he's a flat earther. But his YouTube channel starts with, "The globe Earth theory is physically impossible." That's quite an assertive statement against a round Earth to claim he's not a flat earther, isn't it? But I'll go with it. And just believe he's a demonstrable realist who believes that globe Earth, gravity, and all things space related is a demonstrable fake, even though all those things have been demonstrated with photo and video evidence, right? Everything space related seems to be his major complaint, which brings me to one of his latest posts, the Space Shuttle fraud. LEO, Level Earth Observer, let's go check it out. I'm Jonni Glitch on a quest for conspiracy nonsense.
I'm going to show you how silly the Space Shuttle program was. I'm going to use footage from the very first ever Space Shuttle mission, STS-1. We join the action as the Space Shuttle is supposedly doing 17,500 miles an hour around the globe Earth. They've just opened their cargo doors and they're about to do an inspection. So let's have a look.
Okay, we want to show you our home spot here. We do have a few tiles missing off of both of them. Off of the starboard pod, three tile and some smaller pieces. And off the port pod, looks like I see one full square and looks like a few little triangular shapes that are missing. And we're trying to put that on TV right now. Roger, Grip, we can see that good.
Wow. So now we know the premise of the video. Tiles are missing. Could be a bad day for the shuttle. But before we get too deep into the subject, let's take a quick look at the origin of the first shuttle mission. Although initial testing began in the 1960s, the Space Shuttle program was not approved until 1972. It just so happened that the Apollo 16 missions flew that same year. Mission Commander John Young and Lunar Module pilot Charles Duke became the 9th and 10th astronauts to walk on the moon. The other guy, Ken Mattingly, was their lifeguard, who just happened to be orbiting the moon the whole time in the command module. Fast forward 9 years, and we have STS-1, the first ever test of the Space Transportation System orbiter, Columbia. So who did the space agency choose to command the first historic flight? Well, none other than John Young of the Apollo 16 days. Yep, the space agency took one look at this photo from the Apollo 16 mission and said,
"Houston, we got him. That's a badass."
So John Young is now the new mission commander of the very first Space Shuttle mission. But he's not going alone. His pilot is Robert Crippen, who is a fellow Navy test pilot. The two of them voluntarily climbed into the experimental and yet untested orbiter vehicle. And that's when the space agency looked at that picture and declared,
"Houston, it's official. These guys are badasses."
"Hey, let's slap this donkey." Rolling.
So that's not good. As you can see, several of the tiles, the heat tiles, which protect the Space Shuttle against extreme temperatures during re-entry, several of those tiles are actually missing. Yeah, really not good. And quite revealing.
Yeah, quite revealing is true. Missing tiles on a space shuttle, to be fair, is not a good day. And I wouldn't want to be a pilot and look on a camera and see some tiles missing on my shuttle. Especially since this is the first shuttle, the untested experimental launch of this orbiter. I would be a little nervous. Okay, fair enough, LEO. Let's move on.
And this is where it starts to get sillier and sillier. I'm over at Google. How are the Space Shuttle tiles attached? The tiles were not mechanically fastened to the vehicle, but glued. Since the brittle tiles could not flex with the underlying vehicle skin, they were glued to Nomics felt strain isolation pads with room temperature vulcanizing silicon adhesive, which in turn glued to the orbiter skin. So essentially, that's a lot of fancy names to describe essentially these tiles were glued to the orbiter.
Well, glued is probably not the right term here. Don't get all hung up on glued, because things are basically not glued. That's not a term the aerospace industry uses. I don't know why the word glued is on this little article here. I have no idea why. When you say glue, this comes to mind. A glue stick or something like that. Maybe Elmer's glue. You know that glue you sprayed all over your hands in grade school? Waited for it to dry, then peeled it off like another layer of skin? No, that's glue. This is glue. A glue stick. I don't think tiles are glued on. Besides, glue is the wrong word. Try a better word. How about bonded? Bonded, not glued. Yeah, strain isolation pads, if you see here, the SIPs are bonded to the tiles. And the SIP and the tile assembly is bonded to the shuttle orbiter structure using an RTV adhesive. RTV adhesives can be called adhesive, sealants. What is RTV? RTV 560, thermal insulation silicone adhesive. It is a industrial adhesive. It's used in bonding structures together because it relies on strength, flexibility, durability, heat resistance. RTV can be used at temperatures from minus 115 up to 260 degrees continuously, and up to 316 degrees for short periods of time. Now, to be fair, it doesn't specify short periods of time. Yeah, I see that. It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. But what's the average time an orbiter is in the re-entry period? The hottest part of the re-entry? 15, 20 minutes? Look down at the bottom. Glue is often best for everyday projects, crafts, and minor fixes, whereas adhesives are better suited for heavy-duty or industrial use. Here's a good picture. The upper left here is actually from STS-1. It's in the NASA Space Museum. Now, I don't know exactly where this came from on the shuttle, but you can see the lower part of it is burned. It is melted. It was subjected to some pretty high heats. The lower shuttle, you can see the red RTV adhesive. By the way, the RTV 560 is red, and it means for high temp and extreme environments. On the right side, you see the tiles that are bonded by the adhesive to the strain isolation pads. Another layer of RTV is bonding the pad to the aluminum structure. So there are layers of protection here. It would be an ablative layer if the tile left, but anyway, the RTV is good for 316 degrees for short periods. Strain isolation pads, and then another RTV layer. It's not as bad as you think. And the strain isolation pads are made from something called Nomex. Nomex is the same material used by firemen. It supports combustion in the air and can withstand up to 370 degrees. Just being subjected to 370 degree temperature does not mean this material is immediately 370 degrees. It has to heat up to that level. That's the difference between temperature and heat. Just like an oven. The oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you throw a cake in there. Does the cake immediately start cooking? No, it's got to heat up to the temperature of the bake. So the cake must heat up to the temperature of the oven. So it's not glued. It's bonded. Get over glued. Yeah, we're not going to glue anything, so get over that.
Oh dear.
The aluminum skin will melt at 320 degrees. The silicon tiles must insulate the vehicle from the tremendous heat.
So the aluminium skin that's underneath these tiles will melt when it's exposed to temperatures greater than 320 degrees.
I don't know where this gets 320 degrees from. I've done my research on this, but I'll tell you in a minute.
And that's a major problem when we're looking at this old school footage from STS-1. Because essentially, we've now got parts of the space shuttle that are exposed. They're weak links in the chain, if you like, where we've got the aluminium skin not protected by a heat tile.
Okay, it's not protected by a heat tile, to be sure, fair enough. But there's still something underneath there, isn't there? Your whole glue dilemma revealed that strain isolation pads were under the tile. that a layer of RTV insulation is under the tile. The adhesive itself is good for extreme conditions. The Space Shuttle was constructed with aluminum alloy 2024. Also, aluminum alloy 7075. Both of those alloys can go up to 477 degrees. Not 320, I don't know where the 320 came from. Alright, let's go.
What makes it worse now, the temperatures during re-entry. NASA have told us it's around about 3,000 degrees, which would be terrible for this situation which we see on our screen right now. But they're ranging from anything from 3,000 degrees from NASA all the way up to 9,000 degrees from a NASA legend, a Space Shuttle legend, Gibson, who had this to say about temperatures regarding re-entry.
Start hitting the Earth's atmosphere because you'll start to see a little bit of a glow outside your window. It's white hot outside. It's just as bright as day. And air outside is 9,000 degrees. Well, that's hotter than the surface of the sun.
A little backstory on Hoot Gibson here. Hoot Gibson went on to fly 5 shuttle missions. His first shuttle mission was a pilot 2 missions after the Challenger disaster in 1986. So he was only 2 missions in after that massive disaster, so you can imagine how nervous he was. Then he went on to command 4 other missions. One of those missions involved damaged heat tiles on the lower surface, the black heat tiles, the high temp ones. It was a Department of Defense top secret mission launching a surveillance satellite, probably. I don't know what it was. But it was very interesting. You should check it out. I highly recommend it.
Logically, if this thing was coming back in at 17,500 miles an hour, yeah? The
Does anybody notice he just keeps repeating himself?
moment it hit the Earth's atmosphere and started to feel resistance from the air, and of course friction, and of course high temperatures, the lack of aerodynamics here due to the missing tiles would cause serious problems. The glue would fail, the aluminium skin would melt underneath the tiles that are not even there, exposing more of the aluminium skin, and this aircraft would just disintegrate. That's at 3,000 degrees, yet alone the 9,000 Hoot was on about. Doesn't matter who's right, whether it's NASA or the NASA legend. Coming back in at 17,500 miles an hour, hit an atmosphere, these tiles would be...
Oh my god. How many times can you repeat yourself right after another? I mean, it's like a rolling script here. You already said this, 17,500 miles an hour. It's hot, the air, the tiles falling off. There is something called a bow shockwave. Now, the bow shockwave hits the nose of the space shuttle, and you see the nose in this picture here. This is an illustration, it's not real. And the nose is constructed of a special graphite carbon reinforced carbon material, and that's used to withstand very, very high heats. And also it's the same thing that makes up the leading edge of the wings. Now when the space shuttle hits the molecules of the atmosphere, it ionizes the gases, and it produces this plasma of around 9,000 degrees. But the space shuttle is going so fast, it creates something called a shockwave in front, and the hot plasma blast is blown around the shuttle. And you see here, 40-degree angle creates the best shockwave imaginable. And you see at the top, near the nose, how it goes over the windows. The outside of that bubble, basically, goes over and around the shuttle. All the white tiles on top are basically protected by a convective heat area, not a thermal blast area. So the shockwave is going around the shuttle. This is something known in fluid dynamics as a bow shockwave, and the blunt nose on the shuttle creates a detached shockwave. Now you can see in these thermal images where the actual hot spots are. Just under the nose, the leading edge of the wings, and that giant body flap right under the engines and the tail. Yeah, things get hot. So you can see the design of the space shuttle here uses the blunt body concept. Back in 1953, the Space Administration tested bow shockwaves for projectiles, basically for missiles going through space, but then they noticed that the attached shockwave produced an incredible amount of heat on the nose. So they couldn't use it for a vehicle, but they found out that the blunt concept had the more detached. Now, in between that shockwave and the item itself, or the vehicle itself, there's a cushion of air. It's a high-pressure area that causes the shockwave to go around it, but it actually never touches the shuttle. But it's still very high heat that does touch the shuttle in a convective manner, like an oven. So if you're coming in at this angle, the bow shockwave is going to create something like this. And the top of the shuttle is basically protected at a 40-degree angle of attack coming into the re-entry. So it's okay. It's not coming in like this. Shuttle tiles are missing on top doesn't mean it's going to come in upside down and get all freaky deaky.
Right off the back, the temperatures would just melt the aluminium skin. This thing would have essentially just been burnt to pieces. For anyone claiming, oh, they fixed it before they returned, no. So I'm over at NASA, STS-1, touchdown, landing the first space shuttle mission. We get an image here. I'm just going to nip into the image. When I zoom in, we can see the tiles haven't been replaced, which means this space shuttle didn't come back from space doing 17,500 miles an hour, hit a globe Earth atmosphere, encounter temperatures ranging from 3,000 to 9,000 degrees.
Let me stop you right there. Elio's going back into his monologue of repetitiveness as he repeats his agenda again and again and again. Yes, it's hot. Yes, it came through the atmosphere. The reason those tiles are still missing is because they didn't lie. They didn't have to fix anything. They showed you, yes, we found these in space. Yes, we landed with it. Yes, we are aware of it. They were hiding nothing. But here you are saying, oh, they're still missing, therefore they weren't fixed, and therefore they never went to space. You proved nothing because your observation means nothing. Because you don't know about anything dealing with aerodynamics, thermal aerodynamics, fluid dynamics, shock waves, heat tiles, oh, and glue. I want you to hear his final comments here. Hold on.
Upon re-entry. But strangely enough, it had no problems landing, which means it didn't encounter the things they said it did. Just highlighted, yet again, the fraud that is the Space Shuttle program. They can't get their story straight. The reason they can't is because it's lies.
It's all lies. Even though you know nothing, you don't know anything about shock waves and how the plasma blast goes around the shuttle. So you just blatantly spout stuff that you believe is real without anything to back it up whatsoever. After the shuttle mission lands, they go through a post-flight report. They post-flight check. They do inspect everything. Here we have STS-1, Orbiter Final Mission Report. Notice the date, August 1981. The orbiter flew in April 1981, and it took them this long to make this final report because there was so much wrong with the shuttle when it landed. It didn't land pristine condition with only a few tiles missing on the back. There were a lot of things wrong with this. Moving on to page 85, you see right here it says the orbital maneuvering system pods experienced several significant problems during entry. So yeah, they identified a heat problem. Absolutely. Look at the pictures they include. Now this is the nose gear area, about some damage and delamination in there. Underneath they got some tile issues. This is the body flap under the engines where you can see the blast of the heat right here. The angle, oh, it's amazing. Some more tile issues and some damage to the tiles here. These are the black ones too, by the way. Pretty critical area. Let's go to report number 9. Okay, we're going to get to flight test problem report number 9 here. Number 6, 7. Once it comes up, it's slow to load. 8. And eventually I'll get to 9. Here we go. Tile failure on OMS pod. During STS, approximately 16 segments of undensified dice tiles were lost during ascent. This shows they had issues with it. They were worried about it. They knew that there's a problem and they're going to have to change it. It says here the problem was caused by the on-the-vehicle dicing procedure. where a dull plastic knife is used to cut the RSI down to the SIP, strain isolation pad. This can cause local delamination around each dice segment, which propagates into total segment failure when the maximum dynamic pressure, max Q, of ascent is experienced. So the maximum dynamic pressure is important, and it causes things like this to happen if it's not designed properly. That's why this entire flight was an experiment. And that's why the nose of the shuttle is important for the design during re-entry. And finally, these guys. These guys volunteered to go on the SDS. John Young didn't have to go. He's already been in space. He's already been to the moon. But when they asked him to command the first shuttle mission, how can you say no to something like that? John Crippen, he must have been completely honored why. I think in an interview later, he was asked why they chose him, and he said he had no idea. Crippen went on, by the way, to command 3 more of his missions on his own. These guys were absolute badasses. So that's all I've got for you guys today. We looked at Elio's video. We know what's going on. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know about aerodynamics. He doesn't know about aerothermal dynamics, to be more precise. He doesn't know about bow shock waves, thermal stress areas, high and low temp heat tiles. He doesn't know about the strain isolation pads, and he certainly doesn't know about bonding. The caption under his video says, "Will anyone try to defend this?" I think I did a pretty good job. It wasn't a lie. There is no deception. Tiles were missing, and it was a problem. Deal with it. Guys, I'm Jonni Glitch, and I'm still on a quest for conspiracy nonsense. I'll check you out in the next video. See ya.